this round. We'll come back, Joe, for a comment from you.
Should be a real good fight.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. Today is Charlton and Big C Sports. We come to you live every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide on Charlton and Big C Sports. And today is a great day. It is actually June the 10th, 2016. It's a sad day and a happy day because we just saw Muhammad Ali laid to rest. We'll have some of his fights going on in the background. But Big C, I think when we look at Ali, and I've heard today from President Bill Clinton all the way to Greg Gumbel talking, Bryant Gumbel, his brother, and so many other people, his wife, and all the other dignitaries from all over the world, different faiths. They all talked about how much they loved Ali. Just your thoughts on what Muhammad Ali means not only to boxing but to the entire world, Big C.
Well, Charlton, when you talk about all of these dignitaries and respected individuals from around the world and here in the United States talking about how they love Muhammad Ali, that resonates within itself, Charlton, because you can't have a man of peace, love, and courage that you do not respect and love. Muhammad Ali, Charlton, represented all of those things that we expect in life from greatness. When you talk about the good, his name resonated that, Charlton. He never went out to harm an individual. This is a man who gave up everything that he possessed in life not to go out and fight somebody outside the arena, Charlton, not to go out and hurt another living human being.
Yeah.
That's how precious he was as a person on this planet, Charlton. When you think about the millions of lives and emotions that he had affected during his lifetime and still resonating with affection now, Charlton, just a marvelous, great humanitarian in person for the world to have lost, but for the world to have enjoyed even more, Charlton.
Well, I think about just, number one, I congratulate all the networks because just ironically, you and I have been talking about this theme that you wanted to bring up, Big C. We talk about how athletes can honor the inner city and honor kids that are poor, no matter what color they are, black or white. When you think about what's happened today and all this week, I know that ESPN honored the service, commercial free for the most part, and I think other networks did as well. But when I think about, when I go there, I just want to say this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Escalade, and go down and test drive at the standard of the world and tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, ironically, the car that delivered Ali's body to his final resting place in Kentucky was a Cadillac. And it's always been a staple of excellence for American car makers and for people, not just people of color, but people all over the world, Big C. But when I think about the people that attended and honored Ali, they talked about the great Howard Cosell and Angelo Dundee, how they meant so much to him. But they had Professor Emeritus Harry Edwards, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Hall of Famer, and then three-time NFL champion MVP Jim Brown. They were talking about what Ali meant to them. I know that you saw a lot of Ali too, Big C. When you think of Harry Edwards and Kareem and Jim Brown, how do you relate to them and your affection for Ali, Big C?
Well, not many people realize that Jim Brown and Ali were best of friends in the 60s during the upcoming and the civil rights movement. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a young Lou Alcindor at the time, had also joined the movement, Charlton. These men were readily in the same city together, and when they all got together. And you think about the effect that he had on a Kareem.
Yeah.
He changed to the Muslim beliefs also after he became an adult. That he followed him. He loved and respected Muhammad Ali as a teenager.
Yeah.
He looked up to this man. He looked at his beliefs, his actions in society, and he was a role model for him then as been throughout his adulthood, Charlton. So when you think about these other men that were very prominent in black society, not just through athletics, but they were all civil rights activists. The great Dr. Harry Edwards, who had worked for years with the San Francisco 49ers. He was on their staff during their great Super Bowl runs because they needed a community activist. And that's what he brought to that organization, Charlton. That's why you didn't see 49er players on police blogs.
Yeah.
Because he mentored these young men, Charlton, told them how they should be looked at and respected in society and what society expected from them. And that's what Ali resonated, Charlton, when you look at that. He let African Americans know how they should portray themselves in society to better themselves. Yeah. And that's what he spent his lifetime doing, helping the betterment of other men, Charlton. And so when you see so many well-known dignitaries, entertainers, common people come to pay their due respects at the passing of this man, Charlton, it's because of what he taught them in lifelong lessons. You didn't have to always speak to be heard. Yeah. And Ali, his actions were so great in life. As I told you a couple of days ago, the most powerful moment for me in Ali's life was in 1996 when he lit the Olympic torch in Atlanta. Because he did so much for the world to let families and people know, don't be embarrassed about this affliction called Parkinson's disease. Yeah. He brought world awareness, Charlton, to a disease that people were trying to push under the rug. He did more about bringing this disease out and getting funds raised for it, Charlton, than anybody in history. Just by showing that it's not an embarrassment, it's something you can live with, and go ahead on and be a quality person, Charlton.
Well, when you think about some of the great leaders and figures in the history of the United States, we can go back to Abraham Lincoln. We can look at Thurgood Marshall, Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks, Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and of course we all think of Dr. King and then Nelson Mandela. But what I was very touched by, Harry Edwards talked about, there are many people who are successful, but what is your significance? And President Bill Clinton and even Senator Orrin Hatch, they spoke today because Ali wanted them to speak. He was friends with all of them. Now, Orrin Hatch is a Republican and Church of Latter-day Saints, but I know that when Ali was needed by Orrin Hatch to go do some things in Utah to help raise money for women who were in need, Ali did it. So he spoke about Ali didn't look at politics as Republican or Democrat. It was just as a need, but something that you and I had talked about earlier too, Big C, and I thought this was important because Harry Everett brought it up today. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar brought it up today. Jim Brown brought it up today. We've been talking about it the last couple of days. Not only will the top athletes start standing up and be like Muhammad Ali in your philanthropy and even speaking out against injustice, but they call for corporate America to end poverty, to help end poverty by creating work and creating employment, and it would help drive down crime. And they also talked about Chicago, which had the great President Obama is from Chicago, Louis Farrakhan's from Chicago, Jesse Jackson, Rahm Emanuel was there. Chicago, Roger Goodell had the NFL draft in Chicago, but they have a high murder rate. And so when Jim Brown said we need to do something to speak out against it, to help end that crime happening all over the country, especially in inner cities, you were just talking about it the last 4 or 5 days, Big C.
Charlton, the only way you end crime in a city is to have opportunity, okay? And we need that throughout America. You spoke about corporate America, Charlton. Corporate America is all about the bottom line. How much profit can we turn? And we've seen that with the loss of jobs out of this country over the past few decades, Charlton. When countries have gone to Asia, they've gone to Mexico, they've gone to Europe, they've gone to South Africa, where they can produce their products cheaper, India, and bring them back to the U.S. at a minimal cost. Until the U.S. puts a tariff tax that would equal producing that product, Charlton, here in America, we will continuously create poverty in America because those jobs have left. And when you go out and look for a job, there's no more textiles jobs here in America, Charlton. There's very few high-tech jobs. When you talk about the auto industry, Charlton, the auto industry is high-tech. Cars now are built by robots and computers. They don't have the individuals standing out there welding, putting parts together. They may guide a few parts, but they're not building the cars like they were in the 50s and 60s here in America, Charlton, when America was bustling and, everybody could have whatever they wanted. So when we talk about corporate America's involvement, it becomes a political involvement, Charlton, which Ali rode both sides of it, political and corporate. You have to force the government to put the higher tariffs on all imports, regardless of where they're coming from or regardless who they're owned on, Charlton. I'll go back a couple of years. I'm going to believe it was 2008, Charlton. the last major candy company in America left. Hershey's chocolate, Charlton. Now, you think about it. Every child in America that's over 20 years old grew up with a Hershey bar.
Definitely. I got one right now, Big C, as we speak.
Hershey's with almonds were my favorite.
I think they were out of Modesto, California.
Charlton, the last Hershey plant left California.
Modesto area,
and went to Mexico City.
Yeah.
So even Hershey, an American icon candy, is no longer produced in America.
Well,
but Hershey is making more profit where you were paying the average employee at a Hershey plant at that time when the company left $17.50 an hour. You could take that same company to Mexico and get by with paying somebody $1.75 an hour to produce the same product. So it's all about profit and bottom line, Charlton. It's not about the betterment of America, as these gentlemen spoke at the great Ali's funeral today, Charlton. This is what you have to do. So it's going to have to be a political move. It's going to have to be Congress to enforce that higher tariff. And if Congress is about America having equality, Charlton, which we have not seen over the decades, it comes down to Congress passing higher tariffs, get rid of the lobbyists that can come in, that can pay off the congressmen and say, hey, we don't want to hurt corporate America. You're not hurting corporate America, Charlton. If you're wealthy, how much more money do you really need?
Well, we know that America is a capitalistic country, but I want to touch on something, too, because of what Muhammad Ali stood for. When you look at the people that honored him, and because he was a worldwide figure, and I think and I hope that we'll see a holiday named after the Muhammad Ali, but whether it's black or white, Christian, Muslim, whether you're a Buddhist or a Mormon or a Baptist or a Catholic, atheist, agnostic, Jewish, there were people of all faiths that honored him today. And they were so poignant in saying that we don't want people who are going to divide our country. I know Donald Trump's talking about building walls, but all of the great leaders from the clergy talked about building bridges, because that's what Muhammad Ali talked about, is building bridges. So this is not about Democrat or Republican. It's about stepping outside of our own political interests and saying what's best for humanity. And what Jim Brown brought up, and the great Harry Edwards and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar brought up, is they're trying, he talked about Charles Barkley. I know we were talking about Charles Barkley just the other day, speaking out about poor people and how to help poor people. But think about if the great Tom Brady, quarterback for the New England Patriots, the great Bill Russell, Hall of Famer, Charles Barkley, Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Steph Curry, LeBron James, all of these great people, Jerry Jones, Arthur Blank, the Buss family that owned the Lakers. What if they really had a desire, and they probably do, but maybe it's quiet when in their philanthropy, but what if they had a desire to stamp out poverty in the inner cities in the world, as well as poor white areas? Because all people are just people, according to Ali. But when we were talking about that this week, and now I'm hearing these heads of states, when they were eulogizing Muhammad Ali, they lamented the same thing, Big C. So I know we're on to something. And before I get your remark, I just want to say this segment is sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealer, home of the ultimate driving machine. Go down and test drive the super powerful M7, 600 horsepower, and let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. But Big C, what I love about talking with you is the consciousness, because Big C Sports, like ESPN or any other sports, we're people with our opinions. But going back into the history, when they talked about the great Ali, whether it's his fights with Frazier or his fights with George Foreman that we have on in the background, they all talked about how you can get people who have made it to be significant and not just wealthy. How do you think that's going to resonate with athletes, not just this today, but in the next 2 or 3 years, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, I think it's almost like a lost cause asking these young athletes to have political maturity, Charlton, political awareness. And that means that you're socially conscious. This is not what they go after. They're all out there sitting, regardless black, white, indifferent, Charlton. They're all sitting there looking for the next big payday. They're not looking for the next bit. How can I benefit my society, my community?
But see, what I want to bring up though is that's what Jim Brown is trying to change, and he's asking people, just like Ali, take a stance in what kind of legacy will we leave. I know you can have $10 million, $100 million, but what significance will you have? And because I think we just talked about it, it's going to take a push from athletes, it's going to take a push from universities, also the president, Congress, senators. But when Ali, we know sports galvanizes people. It brings people together. Ali was the prodigal son of Louisville. However, there was a time when he couldn't even eat at a certain restaurant, so he threw his gold medal into the Ohio River. But what Jim Brown is saying is he's also being critical because he's a young man and he had a lot to learn. He learned a lot from Malcolm X. He learned a lot from Dr. King. And what he's saying as a man up in years now is how can we change that push and show leadership? So not just saying what people want to do, but what can we all do to have a little bit of Ali in ourselves? I think our show, because we're so real talk, we open up dialogue, and it's ironic that I keep hearing that same dialogue repeated, a couple of days later, Big C, and it was almost like a mirror today of what we've been talking about for the last 6 months, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, you have to have social awareness and then develop a social conscience.
Yeah.
Okay, those are the keys. And nowadays, the lack of education, I think, with the young athletes and a lot of society about what goes on around them.
Yeah.
How to deal with someone else, Charlton. It's like, I have mine. I'm going to move to a place where I cannot be reached and touched. I don't want to go back into where I was. And I can't blame a lot of these young men for that because of the height of danger in the area where a lot of them grew up, Charlton. And it's almost like going into a jungle where you're full of predators, Charlton, because they see you with something and they want to victimize you because of your achievement.
Well, let me ask you
this. Because of your achievement, you want to separate yourself from those that you see as predators within the jungle. So there's no socialism in America.
Well, let me ask you this.
Anymore. Where great athletes socialize with everybody.
Well, let me ask you this, Big C.
Ali, you talked about Bill Russell, Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kurt Flood, Frank Robertson. Any of these great athletes crossing the barriers of sports, Charlton, they socialize with their people.
So let me ask you this question, Big C.
Baseball, football, basketball is all gotten away from. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, lived in the same neighborhood as their people, Charlton, because they couldn't live anywhere else.
Okay, let me ask you.
Parts of their communities, and the communities see them and have an idol that they can look up to, talk to, and choose to achieve like he had, Charlton.
Okay, let me ask you this question, though. What would you say to Jim Brown or Harry Edwards or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when they're saying, and they were asking Charles Barkley and people like ourselves who have a voice to use it, would you say that it's a lost cause? Or what advice would you give to Jim Brown? Because they're very provocative, and when you think about someone that is so well respected like a Bill Russell, these are some of the most intelligent, thought-provoking men out there, and they're not saying it's a lost cause. They're saying, like Ali said, how can we be an example? What advice could you give?
Charlton, let me give you the greatest example, okay? And people may think that this is a racial statement or whatever. What does every young black child aspire to have? A pair of Nikes, okay, Charlton? They want Nikes. They don't feel that they've been anointed till they got a pair of Nikes on their feet. Phil Knight has enough money to patronize anybody. Why does not Phil Knight put together a campaign that Nikes are not what you need to become a quality person in America?
Yeah.
Nike is what you do is after you've had success. If Phil Knight really wanted to make Nike a non-point issue in America, because we have lost so many black lives over Air Jordans coming out and kids cannot afford them, okay? Price that shoe the way you cannot afford it, all right? Make it a $500 to $1,000. That way you know the average common kid is not going to be standing in line trying to knock somebody off, Charlton, and murder somebody to get a damn pair of shoes.
So let me ask you this question.
Reduce the price, Charlton. If you really want to be realistic, reduce the price down to $25.
Okay.
That way everybody could afford them. That way they wouldn't hold so much esteem. The lesser the price of a product, it does not hold esteem. So if those next pair of Air Jordans came out, Charlton, and they were $20 to $25, because they only cost $12 to make in Vietnam where they're being produced at, okay? $12. That's production and shipping. Make that a $20, $25 shoe. See how valuable Nike shoes are after that, Charlton.
But I think, in back to what Harry Edwards talked about and Jim Brown and Kareem, they were not so much into blaming the kids or the people who are about shoes. And even Bill Clinton talked about it. And Orrin Hatch even talked about it, the Republican. And President Obama was at his daughter's graduation, so he couldn't attend. But they talked about an economy of employment more so than some shoes. And I just want to know your opinion on, because Jim Brown put out a call out to people who have a voice. And we can all blame, and we can always say whatever, but at some point we're all in need of someone to give us a helping hand in life.
Yeah, but Charlton, that's corporate America being allowed to take their businesses out of America and then bring the product back in for pennies on the dollar, Charlton. That's where it is. It's corporate America is Congress. Congress is the voice of America that allows tariffs in this country, Charlton. And so if tariffs, and you don't have to pay on tariff to bring a product in, you keep importing the product, Charlton, because it's cheaper to import the product than it is to produce it here. So as long as Nike, Converse, Adidas, whoever is bringing these products in, Under Armour, Charlton, which is the hottest shoe company in America, they're not produced in America, Charlton. They're produced overseas also, because that's where the profit is. So if you put a high enough tariff and make these shoe companies and these textile companies, Charlton, Walmart, the largest retailer in America, their number one products are produced in India, Charlton, India, where you have slave labor, where you have kids working all day for $2, working 12-hour shifts and making $2. This is Walmart. They're the advocate of that slave labor. Okay? So as long as this is allowed in America, Charlton, nobody has a social conscience, all right? It's about a dollar conscience. Whether it's Walmart, whether it's Nike, whether it's any other big industry who is profiteering off the backs of the people in this country, where you're charging something that's such an exorbitant cost that they can't afford it, that they victimize others, Charlton.
Well, I say that's very powerful too, and I want to say that this also segment is brought to you by your Northern California Ford dealer, home of the all-new F-150. They build it Ford tough, and when you go down and drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org. Make a donation today. It's easy, fast, and secure. Also contribute to Charlton and Big C Sports. So, Big C, I just want to bring this up too, because when there were several other luminaries that spoke today, Billy Crystal was just so funny. He said that Ali called him little brother, and he had a lot of comedy, of course, in his life, and Ali gave him a lot of opportunities.
Charlton, those two performed on Saturday Night Live together. Billy Crystal is just a great humanitarian.
Incredible,
This man has done so many movies. He's done so many charitable things in this society. And this was a young man from New York who came up with nothing, who had an opportunity to success in life, but he did not turn his back on those that he grew up with, or those who opened the path for him, Charlton, to get through. He constantly gave back to the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Charlton. He was one of those people that you say, hey, he didn't have to, but he did.
Well, you know, it's ironic because Billy Crystal talked about Muhammad Ali going out running, and he used to go to this golf course and run. It was a private golf course. And I remember Billy Crystal, who is Jewish, and Ali practiced the Muslim faith. And Billy said, well, Ali, I can't go running with you. He said, well, why not? He said, well, because I'm Jewish, and they don't allow Jewish people to participate on that golf course. And Ali said, really? Well, I'm a black Muslim, and they let me in. He's like, yeah, but you're the champ. He said, well, if they won't let you in, then I won't ever run there again. Now, I contrast that to the Masters, and I do that because there's right and there's wrong. And racism is bad. It's horrible. No matter what color you are, right is right and wrong is wrong. And when Ali had that statement to Billy Crystal, he lived the example just like Dean Smith did when he took his North Carolina basketball team to other cities to play in the South.
Charlton, when you talk about racism,
he wouldn't go. His players couldn't go.
Social conscious, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
That's what racism is. It's not a thing that you're born with. It's a social conscience. You choose to be racist when you're a racist. That's not something that's a birthright. That's a mental right. So it's passed on from generations. You're socially conscious of what you do. You know it's wrong, but you do it because, hey, that's what my dad did. That's what my granddad did. And they told me that's what I have to do. Well, we know social conscious racism in America and throughout the world.
Well, they talked about the pillars of it, how it was actually written in the law that black people had, I think, 3/5 of a person compared to white, and that's part of the law. And but going forward, and what they were all saying today, what was really touching to me when I go back to Harry Edwards and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Jim Brown, not everybody has millions of dollars to pump into a community, but they did say that 1% of the wealth, the top 1% control 80% of the wealth in the country. And they're saying we have to, just what you said, we got to create jobs for people. And if those jobs are created within the United States, it creates employment. But I also want to bring this point up too, because I think it's so powerful. When I look at guys that consider themselves great athletes, like we think of Michael Jordan, or you think of activists like a Harry Belafonte, You think of someone who owns companies, like a sports company, Paul Allen. Well, Barbara Walters, who's great in the media, the whole push that Ali was talking about was how do you end poverty? And I congratulate Harry Edwards so much because he talks about the same thing that Jim Brown talked about, that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar talked about. Poverty in America is what causes crime. Because when you're hungry and you can't eat, you can't function, and if you can't eat, you're going to find a way to eat.
Charles, let's be realistic about crime in America, okay? Crime in America creates revenue, all right? That's what it does.
Yeah.
Crime in America is a profiteering scenario. When we look at prisons in America, they gone private, Charlton. It's private corporate America running prisons, not the government.
Yeah.
It costs $4,000 a year, Charlton, to educate a child. It costs $40,000 a year to incarcerate a prisoner in a prison.
Yeah.
So where's the profiteering? If prisons have gone to private industry running them, if I can make $40,000 a year, the average prison in America now, Charlton, has about 7,000 inmates. Think about it. 7,000 times 40. 40,000, okay?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Now, how many kids you have to educate to equal that amount of money?
Yeah.
A lot more, Charlton. You got to deal with 7 times more kids to create that type of money. We're actually 10 times more kids. Okay, so 10 to 1 ratio, where's my profit at? If I'm making that profit off of 1 versus 10, in corporate America, they like that 1.
Yeah.
Versus the 10, Charlton.
And I think that's so powerful because no matter what we think about and who we want to say needs to do what to make life better for everybody, every time you think about what's happening in societies that make it difficult, it always comes back to lack of employment. And when you don't have employment and a lack of direction, what Ali had was he was able to go and help prisoners get released. I mean, there's presidents that can't do that, but he was able to go negotiate that, and people would talk to him because he had this humanitarian side of him. And what I would like to just say in this final segment that is sponsored by United Labor, guaranteed $100,000 insurance, guaranteed issue, no medical questions. Also, Goosehead Insurance, property and casualty specialist. We beat about 99% of the people when it comes to a quote for property and casualty. Also, I'm an insurance broker for One Life America. We're the leaders in final expense. So, Big C, as we close out the program today and we pay homage to the great Muhammad Ali, I know I also would be remiss if I did not mention that Gordie Howe passed away at 88, considered the greatest NHL hockey player of all time.
Mr. Hockey.
Yeah, Mr. Hockey.
Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe. 4-time MVP, 4-time Stanley Cup winner, Charlton. Had all the records in the NHL prior to the great Wayne Gretzky coming along. The Gordie Howe, not only was he a tremendous hockey player, but he's a tremendous ambassador for the city of Detroit. Now, you think about the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
You know, you had Joe Louis, you had Gordie Howe.
Yeah.
2 of the greatest sports personalities ever to play in your city. And Gordie Howe did it the right way, Charlton. You never heard anything about drugs, anything about off-the-ice incidents with him. He was just a great individual, Charlton. He's known throughout the NHL as Mr. Hockey.
And he played until 50.
You paid homage to him.
Yeah, I think he even played when he was 50 years old, still lacing them up. So,
came into the World Hockey Association in his 50s, Charlton, when they started the new fledgling league. He joined that league to help that league get started, to have a platform.
Yeah, so condolences go out to him and his family. And I know today was about Muhammad Ali all over the world. And I just want to finish up closing out the program today, Big C, that what it means to me, and going back to Harry Edwards and Jim Brown and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, everyone with a voice. I was impressed with some of the media people today because it wasn't so much about who won what game. I know we have baseball going on, we have hockey. The Sharks are going back to San Jose to play the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that's going to be a great game for them. But I'm just so proud of the media today using the voice to not just talk about who won a game. I know Cleveland's playing Golden State tonight, but when they paid homage to Ali, from entertainers to heads of state to other athletes, Will Smith, Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes wasn't there, but obviously he had some great things to say about Ali. Just the thought of this man said, let your brilliance shine. Bill Clinton spoke so eloquently. Let your light shine. Let your light shine. Whatever you have to add to the world. We can all point the finger at somebody, but there's usually 3 pointing back at us. And that reminds me of myself too, because sometimes I'm too critical of the youth. And I need to be more critical of myself and lead by example. I think with our program, this is opening the door for people to not be afraid to talk. And Ali has inspired me to do more of that, Big C. And I always appreciate you and your history coming on. So what message I would like to give to more people? Treat everyone fair. Treat everyone with respect. And for our politicians, I hope that we're serious about creating more work opportunities for all people, not just people of color, but all people, all faiths, and all religions. Big C, your thought on that?
Well, what I'd like to see, Charlton, is that Congress be more active in creating jobs in America. That people want to lay it on the president, but it comes down to Congress, Charlton, laying larger tariffs on these companies that bring in their goods back into America, Charlton.
Yeah.
They have to charge these companies more now. If they charge these companies more taxes do what, Charlton? Create jobs. Now that the government can create more jobs within America, Charlton, that's what will happen. Then we will ease the burden on society, Charlton, becoming victims to those who are predators out there who don't feel that they have an opportunity.
Yeah.
But it starts with our government, Charlton. It starts with our government, then it goes to those wealthy corporations. But it's a domino effect. If the government enacts this, then other people will follow, Charlton.
Well, I think that's so true, Big C, because we all need leadership. And what resonated well, not was Ali only the prodigal son of Louisville, Kentucky. He's a prodigal son, I think, of America, because when he went...
Of the world, Charlton.
Of the world.
The prodigal son of the world.
That's well said.
Because the world lost something.
Yeah.
Not America.
Yeah.
The world.
And that was so poignant when I saw just so many different faiths, because we're up on political season, and I'm sure back on Monday we'll have, who's bad and who's good, and, Donald Trump has all of his hatred going on, and you realize that if he was speaking today at Ali's eulogy, he would have felt so out of place. He could not have. And this is not.
He could not
exactly.
go to an event like that.
Exactly.
Because he's talked about eliminating Muslims from America. So what Donald Trump was saying,
Ali would not have been welcome.
Ali did not belong here.
Yeah, and so
that's what Donald Trump was saying.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali did not belong in America.
And see,
this is people that think want to vote for president.
Yeah, and it's a shame because you saw the direct contrast when I saw different faiths, from Muslim to Buddhist to Mormon, the Native Americans, Baptists, Catholics, agnostics, atheists, Jewish. There were so many people that talked about the love they have, not only for humanity, but for that one man. So, Big C, we know that, and again, I congratulate Jim Brown and wanted to bring people together to say, have a voice. If you can do something, money talks. Prayer is great, but money and investment in communities, it's worth more than 1,000 words. And I hope that Jim Brown is onto something. I hope that President Obama is onto something, as well as the great President Bill Clinton and all the other luminaries from around the world. So as I want to let you close out, Big C, just going forward, what is it that Ali meant to you that you would like to say? What would be your significance as we all pass on? We're not going to live forever. What significance do you want to leave for this planet, Big C, as we have the Big C, Charlton and Big C Sports Show? Go right ahead, sir.
Well, Charlton, as a young athlete, he led a path that I wanted to follow. I wanted to be arrogant. I wanted to be boisterous. I wanted to be dominant. I wanted to let people know that there was a purpose, and when I showed up, I was showing up to be the best, as he had been throughout his lifetime. But he also opened up a social consciousness for me also, Charlton, to told me not to be embarrassed about who I am, to be able to speak. People might not like hearing what you say, but you have to say what you have to say, Charlton.
Yeah.
A silent voice will never be heard, nor will it help anyone.
Yeah.
And that's what he taught me about my social awareness and consciousness, Charlton, is that you have to tell people the true story.
Well,
and when you tell the truth, the story will be the same 5 and 10 years from now. But when you lie about your action, you don't remember what you said. And so he taught me to be a respectful man, an honorable man, and to tell the truth. And so that's how I've lived my life. Let people know who you are, what you are, and don't be embarrassed or ashamed.
And I agree. I appreciate that very much, Big C. For me, I've always said what I was taught growing up. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Be fair, and do your best not to hurt people. Make sure that when they come into your life, you're going to leave their lives better. And Ali was definitely the greatest because he helped make lives better for everybody. And hopefully we can too, every Monday through Friday 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Worldwide, you can hear Charlton and Big C Sports. We want to let you know that we always want to keep it real. Whatever you can do in life to make life better for somebody, go ahead and give it a try. So based on that, God bless you, Muhammad Ali. And for everyone listening, we appreciate you, and we wish that you have a super fantastic day.